Hello, everybody. Good evening. I'm Ulrich Obrist. I'm here today with Simon Castets, moderating this, actually introducing this panel, which will be moderated by Keyhole, one of our 89 plus panels. I wanted to, first of all, thank Basel, Miami, and of course, foremost and above all, the great Claudio Vogt. We all should give Claudio a great applause. And of course, the amazing teams of Art Basel and our panelists. A very warm welcome to Brian Khek, to Amalia Ullman, to Monahan, to Dena, Yago, and McGarry. We are very excited you're here. I wanted to say a few words about 89 plus, just as a matter of introduction. 89 plus, Simon and I started at DLD earlier this year, is a long-term international multi-platform research project. We aim at 20 years so far, and it investigates innovative work by the generation born in or after 1989. Without forecasting artistic trends or predicting future creation, 89 plus manifests itself through panels, through books, through periodicals and exhibitions. After DLD, we've organized several conferences. It all culminated in the Serpentine 89 plus marathon, which happened in the new Serpentine Sackler Gallery, designed by Zaha Hadid, happened in October this year. But there are many other dimensions. There are exhibitions. We plan an exhibition at the Luma Foundation in January this year. There is also books, a whole series of 89 plus books is planned. And last but not least, very importantly, there are the residencies. We think it's very important to create multiple residencies. We started with the Tara residency, and in 2014, there will be a whole series of new residencies. Maybe a few words about why the year 1989. 89 saw the collapse of the Berlin Wall and the start of the post-Cold War period. It saw the introduction of the World Wide Web and also the beginning of a universal availability of the internet through this invention of Tim Berners-Lee, as well as also the orbit of the first global positioning system satellite. So it is very much a turning point in history at which urgent questions present themselves that have been crucial in informing today's artistic, social, and also political options. New languages, models, and forms need to be conceived to address the impact that a network society and an evolving global economy have had and also have on today's generations. We realized after general 89 plus introductory projects that it could be very urgent to actually start to have a thematic focus. So we had in Zurich, in a first kind of Luma think tank, the focus of sustainability, of limited resources. It was the resource panel. And we felt today for this panel in Miami that it could be interested in focusing on the topic of branding. And Simon Castets will now introduce the topic of today's panel.
Thank you. So indeed, today we're going to be focusing specifically on the theme of branding. As Ulrich said, we're in the very early stages of the project, and we thought it would be too bad to start right ahead for a very long-term project with defining already too many themes and patterns. But we thought that would be really interesting today to focus on this because we don't want to... we're not seeking to categorize or draw specific conclusions about a generation, and we're interested in exploring in depth the different themes that emerge. And essentially, 89 Plus is a combination of both quantitative and qualitative research. On the one hand, we're able to gain a very comprehensive understanding of the work of this generation, and on the other hand, we get to engage more in depth, in more long-term conversations with a selection of protagonists who are involved in many different 89 plus projects. Just a quick word about how 89 plus is structured. It is structured on an online research database, and we've been talking a lot about the exhibition, the Museum as Muse, which was held at MoMA, organized by Kinnison McShine a very long time ago, and we thinking of 89 plus in a way as the internet as muse, because it is more than just a medium, it is also a muse, as Ulrich said. We chose the year 1989 because it's the year when the World Wide Web was introduced. And also the internet is what allows us to begin conversations with protagonists from this generation from all around the world, because what we don't realize is that the people born in 1989 and after represent more than almost half of the world's population. But this proportion is about 30% in Europe and the US, but it's also over 60% in most African countries and some Southeast Asian countries. So it's incredibly important for us to have that global reach, which the internet affords us. And now, in a 2 words, I just want to say how the panel is going to be organized. It will be moderated by Sean Monahan and Dena Yago. And then Brian, Amalia, and Kevin will be also presenting. So I will now hand it over to Ulrich to introduce Keyhole.
Our first speakers and moderators are Keyhole. This is not the first time that 89 Plus collaborates with Keyhole. We can say ESWKH. Everything started with Keyhole because they were part of our panel in Munich. Keyhole is a trend forecasting group founded actually by a group of New York-based artists, designers, and also brand strategists and writers, very importantly so. What makes their trend reports very special is that they're actually contrary to industry standards, available for free on the internet, and very often Keyhole addresses how brand and consumer culture and experience are actually constructed. We have today 2 of the 4 members of Keyhole with us, as Simon said, Sean Monahan and Dena Yago. Sean is an artist and writer based in New York City. He received his BFA from Rhode Island School of Design in 2009. His work has been widely exhibited in MUCA Antwerp, the Electronic Arts Intermix, and he's one of the founding members of Keyhole. We also have Dena Yago. Her work has been exhibited in many different galleries all over the world, in Berlin, in Toronto. She currently lives and works in New York City and bridges many disciplines, as the whole activity of Keyhole very much goes beyond the fear of pooling knowledge. Please welcome Sean and Dena, who will discuss Keyhole.
Hi, as you know, I'm Dena and this is Sean. There are 3 other members of Keyhole: Emily Siegel, Greg Fong, and Chris Sharon. We have been doing these reports for around 4 years now. We met in various stages in college and all kind of ended up in New York once we'd graduated. We ended up first coming across trend forecasting reports because of our day jobs. They sort of ended up getting passed between us, and trend reports are usually sold for tens of thousands of dollars. And when we were reading these things, we realized that a lot of the language that was being used to talk about larger consumer and cultural strategies was really similar to the language of art. And we thought, as artists, why not reclaim this role of being the sort of perennial trend forecasters? So another thing that we were thinking about was that as artists, we're also consumers, and that's kind of the big, picky secret of the whole thing, is that artists are using up a lot of resources, consuming a lot of resources, and producing, arguably a lot or a little out of that. And between us and our artistic practices, and us and our day jobs, and us as consumers, we're living in this completely collapsed field. So we're realizing that any kind of boundaries that we were putting up between our lives as designers, consumers, artists, people were kind of artificially being constructed. So what we started writing about were macro trends. Macro trends are not industry specific. They kind of identify larger cultural strategies that are being, you see carried out in advertisement and product development and, political movements. And we decided to release the reports as free PDFs because ultimately we're using trend forecasting and writing as a platform just for direct communication to the widest audience possible. So we circulate them kind of half and half between the art world, but also in the worlds that we're working in, branding and marketing, and just trying to address our conflicts of interest head on rather than avoid.
So this is our second to last report. It's the brand anxiety matrix. As trend forecasters and brand strategists, we really think of brands as our material. And when we were making this, we were sort of thinking about the way that the products around us, the brands and the narratives, really inform the way that we perceive ourselves and experience the world. At the time, we were sort of feeling this overwhelming and unidentifiable anxiety, and we decided to see if we could map that out in the way that we interacted with the commercial landscape around us. So it's a 2x2 matrix that was inspired by Donald Rumsfeld's comment about known unknowns during the lead up to the Iraq War. It goes from legible to illegible and chaos to order. Legible to illegible, sort of talking about the degree to which you can understand or perceive a meaning or a message, and chaos to order, addressing the degree to which that message is structured in some way to be perceivable. And we sort of thought of this as a toolkit for addressing the world around us. And it sort of helps us self-evaluate, and it was the beginning of our foray into thinking about this project as more than just a free version of these reports that exist in the business world, and more of a public-facing project that has the capacity to help people understand the world around them and really interact with the sort of strategies and trends that are being enacted on them and that they're interacting with every day. Our last report was called Youth Mode, a report on freedom. It focused on generational branding, and we launched it at the Serpentine Gallery for the 89 Plus Marathon there. Traditionally, generations have been measured in 20-year periods. So like I think everyone here can identify as being a boomer or part of Gen X or a millennial potentially. And these have sort of been understood as shorthand for like the changes that are happening around us in society and sort of measuring different historical eras and social change that's enacted within them, which is sort of why you have the boomers who are defined by Vietnam and post-war prosperity, and then you have Generation X defined by the new economy in the 90s and the dot-com boom. Right now there's been a lot of focus on branding today's youth and accessing them, especially since they're so active on online platforms and there's sort of a wealth of data, but people don't necessarily know how to contextualize that data anymore. But we sort of thought that this was an outdated idea and that young people aren't the only people who are agents of social change anymore, even though traditionally that's the way it's been perceived for maybe the past century. The timelines have sort of gotten screwed up on people's lives. The idea of financial independence and retirement being postponed, and then also this sort of like expanded youth that a lot of people have been experiencing after the Great Recession with a lack of job opportunities has really mixed up the social landscape. So we sort of tried to think about what age truly represents, and we came to the conclusion that this focus on youth is actually a focus on finding individuality and freedom. And so youth mode is this idea that people don't have to be young in order to change and adapt to the changing circumstances around them, and that youth is basically a set of questions people ask at any age, and that youth is truly just a way of relating to questions of individuality and freedom.
So we came up with a kind of three-pronged set of terms, kind of what's going on in this landscape. So the kind of old world model of asserting your individuality is being like, mom and dad, you don't get me, rebel without a cause, I'm going to take your car, whatever. And that kind of assertion of individuality is really based on differentiation. And something that we were experiencing growing up in the 90s is that alt culture was slowly creeping into becoming the mainstream. And like everybody, Kurt Cobain, still kind of makes sense as this like alternative icon. But eventually, as we're growing up, we realized that everyone around us, and this is especially true with us, making decisions to become artists, was, had their own unique individuality to the point where the micro differentiations of what made, you versus me different just became like completely unrecognizable, and everybody ends up looking the same. So the term that we came up with for this is mass indie, independent being the new mass culture. So taking this logic has pretty much completely collapsed. You see two kind of emergent behaviors come out of mass indie, of ways to kind of work against that. One of them we call acting basic. So if you're dealing with the fact that everybody's different in their own way, what are you, a logical reaction would be, oh, I'm just going to 180 it and try my best to look like as normal as possible. This is kind of like the white t-shirt, the cargo pants, the flip-flops, normie life. But acting basic was still kind of thinking about individuality as like in a difference sameness model. It's like, oh, well, if everybody's different, then I'm just going to be the same. And that's not really thinking about a kind of third sphere or it's still thinking within the same model, basically. And what we started feeling is that the inversion of what is kind of happening in the world around us is that individuals used to be born into a community and had to kind of come up and come of age and individuate themselves from the group. And now, with kind of the nuclear family disbanding and, just general social change, we're sort of individuals that are trying to find a community. And a lot of what you're seeing this happen on social platforms like Tumblr, Facebook, not as much, but it's just kind of, you're trying to resonate with somebody. And the term that we came up with for this was normcore. So normcore is neither about individuating based on difference or individuating based on sameness and participation. Normcore is about more of like a nodal two-point interaction where you're understanding your context and you're really just taking the path that will lead to the most open communication. A lot of it is empathy-based. You're trying to sort of like empathize with the people around you and to sort of receive that in the same way. And it's also, it takes like a level of perceptibility and willingness to kind of address of what's going on around you. And you sort of realize that you use different language to talk to different people, so that they can sort of not even get it or not get it, but just kind of communicate and open up those channels. Like a key defining characteristic of normcore is its approach to fuzziness and the potential of misunderstanding and miscommunication. Because in normcore, you're not really worried about someone not getting it. It's more about the kind of fuzzy aura around getting it or not getting it, where you could be misheard or misunderstood, and then new meanings can kind of get created in that fuzzy space. So normcore is kind of, we drew out this semiotic square here that kind of spells it out, if you take a minute to look at it. And normcore is kind of like a fuzzy thing that we're trying to figure out, and I don't even necessarily think that I could tell any one of you whether or not you're being normcore because I'm sitting on the stage and we're not having a conversation. But it's it's aspirational. So yeah, I guess this all kind of leads back to the topic of this panel, which is with self-branding, how you're trying to individuate yourself, and if you are in the first place.
Thank you, Dena. Thank you, Sean. The title of your last report, Use Mode, brings me to one aspect we want to emphasize about 89 plus, which is something we keep repeating, is that 89 plus is not about use, it's just about a generation. It's a generational study about a generation which today happens to be young, but as it is a very long-term project, we look very much forward to be talking with you when you'll all be, in your late 30s, and we're very much looking forward to that moment. As we were researching for the panel today, we came across that article from Forbes called "Everything You Know About Branding is Wrong." It was published 3 days ago. And they were asking this key question, saying whether designing a company's headquarters or field office, their website, or developing a new brand strategy, start by asking two questions. Who are you and why do you matter? Which brings me to introducing Brian Khek, whom we're very happy to have with us today. Brian was born in 1989 in Chicago, where he is based now. He received a BFA from the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. His work, which is focused on globalized consumer cultures, has been exhibited in Stockholm, Seoul, and Paris. And he is preparing a solo exhibition at American Medium in New York, which opens late January. Please join me in welcoming Brian.
So in my work, I'm trying to find different alternatives to all of these social modes. I'm trying to find maybe like an impossible social mode where it's like a third demographic. And I'm trying to escape originality, ubiquity, and throughout all that, I believe that someone could escape a demographic. But there are so many modes and opportunities for people to take something that is super accessible, try to be individualistic, expressive, make something their own, but in the end, it's just the same piece of clay that's just molded into a different form, serving a similar purpose in a different place. So I feel like maybe there's another way that you could move in a herd but with stripes. But I don't think that moving in a herd means you're adopting an individual style. I think that this international style that is very common could also be dangerous because this is what I call something like power and death. So you see, if something is commonly perceived as popular, I think then this certain gesture has more relevance because more people could relate to it. Everyone understands what it means to have like some piece of modern furniture, whether it's like from IKEA. This is like an aesthetic that everyone understands, and in that you have power because it's adopting a language that people can relate to. But this is also death because it's not a contribution, it's not being noticed, and in that sense, you're not actually living. So the reality is that even if it's different, just like snowflakes, it all looks the same from far away. So it's not an actual contributing thing, or it's just another horse, or another alien. But aliens and predators, that's another allegory that I want to bring up, speaking of different consumer modes. I feel like you could either choose to be a consumer or a user or prosumer, but those are all completely cyclical, and in the end it's just you're the same person that an alien is adopting or taking host of. So you see, these things are reoccurring, and they look really similar, and they keep coming back. And in the end, everyone's just going to look like a thinner and sexier version of Catherine Zeta-Jones or an alien. It's all the same. They all adopt each other's persona, and it's the same demographic. But how do you escape something that's completely general? Everyone wants something that is individualistic and specific to their individual needs. This is kind of like a diagram that I designed where I'm trying to reconfigure a specific demographic. This one is a little designed towards myself. This is a combination of Amazon product review and a horoscope. And I feel like this is maybe like an alternative mode for consumer demographics where people aren't identifying with a nationality or an age range. It's not 18 to 24. No one is really identifying with astrological signs, which is completely arbitrary. And I think maybe class is in a whole different way. It's like another constraint that you don't have control over. But this is just another fictional way to approach an individual and what kind of demographic they would fit. So in this fictional diagram, I'm trying to generate a specific consumer that is based on their horoscope, and I think with that, you have something that's not specific to like a nationality. You can be American or French, but you're still a Capricorn. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brian. One of the things which may be interesting also is, emerging patterns, or in last DLD, patterns that connect. And obviously, as the database is growing, and we've got more than 3,000 dossiers already, we start to see pattern also in terms of cities. And there clearly seems to be an incredible Chicago miracle kind of popping up, because it's not only in art, but also in music. And it was fascinating earlier this week when we had a conversation with Kanye West and Jack Herzog, that he talked a lot about Chief Keef and that whole, Chicago music context. So that's just, another dimension of this project, sort of geographical patterns. And it leads us to a completely different geography. Amalia Ullman lives and works between geographies. Ever since we started with DLD, Amalia has exhibited in so many different places. Her recent projects include Moist Forever at Future Gallery Berlin, Promise of Future at Marbury's in Geneva, and also many online projects. I particularly like to emphasize here the Ethera app, which you can all find in the Apple App Store, which is actually an app Amalia has designed. Amalia was born in 1989 in Argentina, and now lives and works between London and Gijón in Spain. And the main focus of her research is very often class difference, and also how it affects social interactions, how it affects emotions, and also human relation. Her work analyzes social stratification, cultural capital, class imitation, and seduction. A very, very warm welcome to Amalia Ullman.
Hello, my name is Amalia Ullman, and I'm an artist who cares about money, the lack of it, and the consequences of such a thing. How does it affect your emotions, your posture, your skin, your speech? Do you have health insurance? Do you eat white bread, rye bread, or no bread at all? My aim is to scrutinize hierarchies, class divide, power relations, the interactions between weak and strong. I also like analyzing the interactions between men and women, nurse fetishism, maid fetishism, looking up to you, let me wash your feet. Sometimes I think you're just too good for me. I'm interested in how people treat people, empathy, communication, kindness, and torture, peace, the infliction of pain. Unimposed neoliberalism is torture. I also like playing around with economics. Capitalism is violence. No one will work harder for you. The ontology of shops and movement outside. Where to go when there's nowhere to go. What to buy when there's nothing to pay with. I experience the city by walking, by reading, by seeing, by window shopping, by consuming. The never-ending amount of information acquired by a long sequence of steps is never related to the quantity of cash in my pocket, of zeros in my bank account. I will walk across this city and understand its history. I will visit its shops and understand the notions of exchange. I will go to euro stores, pound stores, and dollar stores and understand global economy. I'm a city dweller. By window shopping, I fulfill my duties as a urbanite. Personal renovation crystallizes itself in a newly bought thing. I drown of excitement in an ocean of glitter. Note to self 1. Bright girl, because everybody can see that I'm beautiful. Spain was for a few years, maybe in an illusory manner, part of the first world. After the crisis, Southern European countries, or pigs, were slowly kicked back to the pig pen they were supposedly belonged to. Would it be possible that within our limits, sensibility had become more attentive to detail, more acute? I enjoyed the little that has been left to me. The aesthetics respond to the times perfectly well. Everything is mild, soft, discreet. No one would try to surpass the limits of conformity. No one would try to be more than the rest. Exacerbated neoliberalism emphasized the virtues of youth, self-expression, energy, passion, growth. Recession is claiming stillness and randomness, while leading to an agony and exhaustion. Spain has become a waiting room, and as such is inoffensive, insipid. You won't believe this story because it's just so normal and smells good too, like beige and beyond new. The wavy willow is a secret and silent guest. Its main quality is its innocuous and harmless nature. The wavy willow is a democratic judge. No matter where you are, the wavy willow is there to remind you how you are the same, whatever your situation may be. The wavy willow represents the sort of objects I've been enjoying lately. It's discreet. It functions almost as a sub-image. Something that doesn't quite register, which you don't quite see. In this regard, it seems to me to function in much the same way as stock imagery. Pretty is a mask used to protect oneself from one's real desires and taste. It doesn't court attention. Instead, it has quietly established itself at a healthy standard, moderation and restraint. Pretty is as socially accepted as it is cute. To have a paid affair with a cute young girl is more self-assuring and calming for today's businessman than to have so with a hot, dirt. It is the myth of Carla Bruni. It looks organic, it looks pretty, it looks cute yet sexy, but it's not. Only when the mask of pretty has been taken off. Cute is one of the most dangerous words. This is me. I take many pictures of myself. Probably that's why I'm best known for. This is me too. This is how I communicate, how I articulate. A self-portrait is a note, a diary entry. People love blood spatter drama. Of course I continue taking pictures. It's a personal bad habit the same way other people smoke. I find it difficult to articulate pain in words, not so much in pictures. And what about poetry? Poetry is in text. Poems are images too. Only coming out of the pain, I started articulating in prose again. It was also a trick. How much can one fetishize female pain? There is no pretty pain, there is no cute pain, but people keep on believing so because people believe in images over everything else. That I smell good doesn't mean that I'm happy. A bedridden girl, a dreamy girl, she can't escape, she has lost the ability of running away. Dumb, weak girl tied to a bed, no sexual organs affected, everything else is forgivable. I believe in ideas over materials, like cheap, shiny materials and editions, small, invaluable objects, tons of them, repetition. Key rings, keychains, bookmarks. No respect for the unique object, no respect for the collectors. Who cares if everything is cognitive energy anyway? Semiotics. Buy a souvenir of my online presence. Logistics, because I'm studioless. Stickers are easy to carry, hand fans are simple to ship. Wire figures are inexpensive to produce. Drawn, be on time. I want my things and I want them now. Poem 8. I used to think I had the answer to everything. The dream is sweet, now must buy. Item. Aesthetic consumption aligns one to a particular class position, but a position of criticality is itself a space of privilege. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Amalia. We will now hear our last presentation before we turn to the questions which Keyhole prepared for today. Kevin McGarry is a writer and curator based in Los Angeles and a very valued advisor to the 89 Plus project ever since the outset. He has written for Art Forum, Frieze, T, the New York Times Style magazine. He's the director and programmer of Migrating Forms, a festival of new experimental film and video, which will open in New York next week on December 11th. Please join me in welcoming Kevin.
Thank you, Simone. Yes, so I was not born in or after 1989, and I'm not an artist, but I largely work as a freelance writer, responding to and interpreting other people's work and public identities. And a lot of the artists that I've written about engage vocabularies of brands and the notion of branding in their work. Some examples of those are Keyhole, or Lizzie Fitch and Ryan Trecarton, or Dis Magazine, or newer artists like the fashion label posing as an art collective, posing as a fashion label, Misa and Abim kind of thing, Shanzai Biennial, which I wrote about for Kaleidoscope earlier this year, or the new collective GCC, which is an unassigned acronym used by a group of Arabian Gulf artists emulating the bureaucratic gestures of the Economic Consortium, the Gulf Cooperation Council, which is also GCC. That was sort of a mouthful. But as a appropriate to the subject of this panel, cross-promotional plug that is in the new issue of Moose that is in the magazine area outside. So naturally, everyone has a personal brand and a professional brand, and for me, I feel really fortunate to be in a position where my own brand isn't as scrutinized as much as an artist's, or at least is more malleable, because my work deals more with contextualizing other things and people and moving and from one thing to another, whether very quickly or over a long period of time. And maybe I would be more interested, if I were more interested in creation than interpretation, it would be an exciting prospect to have a sort of concrete brand that follows me around and to work with. But it's sort of something I think is very complicated to maintain and to deal with, and well, I'll mention something about that later. Anyway, for the sake of discussion, I did want to share that I have, with regard to my own brand, whatever that would be, I have sought out relationships with publications that could be seen as antithetical, because I write as often for art journals as for glossy lifestyle magazines, and the way that you write for those publications is very different, and the audiences are really different. But what's interesting to me about writing for lifestyle magazines is that they reach a huge number of people, and it's people who might be experts or connoisseurs, but more likely have more of a casual interest in art, or don't have specialized knowledge about art history and the way that the art world functions. So it forces me to distill ideas into very pure, accessible forms. And it also creates an interesting opportunity, which I guess is mainly hypothetical, but sometimes can be more real, of situating artists in a context that's embedded with luxury marketing and this whole weird, I meant to say world, but weird works too, sort of friction between things that are very much related, the art world and luxury, but also are meant to not be too related because issues of integrity come up, and yeah. So anyway, and I wanted to mention actually that a very interesting example of there being a collaboration between a lifestyle publication and a artist collective would be when the group I mentioned earlier, Shanzai Biennial, launched last year during Beijing Design Week. They did a project with a magazine that I write for called, I wasn't involved with it, but it was called It's Modern Weekly China, which is a huge circulation lifestyle magazine in China. And they ran what I think was like an 8-page advertorial, art-directed advertisements made by the group of the clothing and sort of advertising campaign that they created as something that was sort of hypothetical but immediately becomes real once it's published and disseminated to 2 million people. So this week in Miami, I think, is a really unique phenomenon because it's an opportunity, or has become an opportunity, for there to be a crazy explosion of really explicit collaborations between brands and artists. Some examples are, I received a press release about macaroons that were creative directed by Will Cotton, and there's always tons of beverages like the new Jeff Koons Dom Perignon, and last year I think there were around 11 launch events for the Richard Prince brand, Arizona Iced Tea Lemonade. And I was really, really optimistic about putting together an amazing slam poetry presentation of all of these, but then decided against it because I don't really want to make fun of it, although I do think there's something poetic about that happening. So anyway, I think that this week in Miami really has anchored an explosion in art fairs, obviously, over the last 10 years or so, and also over the art world becoming more perceived as more commercial, which sort of is an oxymoron, but because the art world, of course, is always commercial, but becoming more visible that way to a wider audience of people, and to other, more on the radar of other areas of commercial activity in the world. And something that's happened over the same period of time has been a lot of debate over the diminished influence of the art critic, particularly with respect to power and influence within the market. And while I don't really think that that's a primary motivation of most art critics' writing, is to have influence over the prices of people's work or anything like that, which might be a naive belief, but I just think that it's more of well, anyway, it's something that it sort of historically went with the territory. However, I do think that something that has happened while the role of the traditional art critic has sort of diminished is more opportunities have come up, or rather more responsibility has come up to be careful and strategic in how artists are situated in relationship to publications and brands and other contexts, because now there's sort of this very complicated array of ideas and problems that artists need to contend with as art becomes more visible to a much broader audience and intersects with industry and corporations and the things in the world that are actually really running the world and making, controlling the world more or less. So that's my comment, and thank you very much.
Thank you so very much, Kevin. And I think we have now exactly 10 minutes left, so it's a good moment to hand over to Keyhole for maybe some urgent questions to Brian, to Amalia, and to Kevin.
I would also like to extend the questioning to you guys, too, if you want to jump in at any point. I think the first big thing to tackle that we've all kind of exercised a little bit here is presence of personal brands. I'd be interested in kind of hearing what your guys' relationship is to the image that you've been cultivating of yourself and your work, and how that circulates.
I feel like the popular subscription is that people believe our generation is just a breed of public relation freaks that are really obsessed with like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever. But I feel like it's also important to remember that a lot of people can deny to subscribe to using these outlets too. So I think there's a very specific precarity to using these tools, and I think it's also important to look at how little someone might choose to use them too.
All right. I I guess a follow-up question is something that's happening in the States right now is the Federal Trade Commission is trying to clamp down on advertorials and branded content. So a question that I would have for you guys is, how much is the work that you're creating tied to your personal brand, and like, is there a separation? Would you think of your work as branded content?
Well, in my case, I don't see a separation between my work and my life, so I find it very easy to like have a personal brand, or I wouldn't call it that way, but like because I just don't make the distinction. And also, since a while ago, I would just do things that I would like 100%, like without really caring about a dialogue or be part of an artistic discourse or something. So I think like everything like functions as a whole, and like personally, yeah, I don't make distinctions. Like everything is connected. I don't know about them.
Yeah, I feel like classically artists have been really just tied to what they make their work about. You know, it's like a opportunity for them to express something vicariously through a different formal mode. But I think maybe that seems more apparent because there are more avenues for artists to make this more visible.
And I think we also wanted to see if you guys had any like anecdotes about how you've developed your personal brands, or if there's anything that you've like felt like you've actively contributed or like pulled back later on in the way that you've like publicly presented yourself or what you've shared with people.
Like if you feel like you've ever kind of tripped up and made mistakes, or if you feel like everything has been pretty streamlined.
I feel like you have to commit to all of it. I mean, a lot of it just stays there. I have a Zanga from middle school that is just online. It's archived through different, I don't know, it's online. Don't look for it. Yeah, I feel like the best advice is to just not try to deny something that you published, but if you feel like you made a mistake, or I don't know, I feel like the best is to not deny something. I don't know, because it's all you, right?
Personally, I committed lots of mistakes, and that's why I would never Google myself. Yeah, I did commit lots of mistakes.
Do you guys consider yourself internet famous?
No, I don't think so.
Is that a goal at all for anyone to be internet famous? Is that a goal for anyone to be internet famous?
Actually, not personally, because actually that makes me very self-conscious about the content I publish online, because if I'm like so transparent about like all the things that I share, is because I don't know why, because I upload from my phone, it feels like I'm like dropping all these things into this vault that like is like this trash can, and no one will see it. Also, for some reason, I tend to believe that the amount of likes is the amount of people seeing my content, which obviously hasn't got to do with it. So that keeps also a transparent approach to like how I share things online. So I really don't like thinking about the amount of people seeing it. So yeah, because it would make me feel very uncomfortable with it. So yeah, no, I wouldn't.
I guess that would lead to a follow-up question. Is that something, a trend in branding is that brands are kind of opening themselves up, using social media to conversation, to having both inputs and outputs. So if you are, putting your work out there and having a presence online, how much of it is to start a conversation and open up your personal brand to your audience, and how much of it is like a broadcast stream?
Sometimes, I mean, for me, it's 90% of like impulse that I don't think about, and then 10% like, especially when it comes to art, or like shows or documentation of, I want to create a dialogue and like share what, the art content. Like everything else is like more based on impulse of like growing up in like a very isolating place and being by myself all the time. So it's like a way of communicating without having to like talk on a one-on-one basis. Just like, oh, this is what I'm doing. If you want to comment back, let's talk. But like, yeah, that's how I function basically. I just put it out there and then I get responses. But I've been doing that since I'm 16, so like it's just that impulse.
Okay, so I guess a lot of what you're saying has to do with like a certain like not looking at the metrics, like not Googling yourself. But does that also like help you not to have this anxiety over being like too much in control of content and the fact that like you just put it out there? So, but do you ever feel like too out of control about your level of exposure, or does that ever like figure into?
There's a point where I don't care anymore. I mean, it's like would be too complicated at this point. But it's funny how like different social networks make me feel different about certain content. Like even if it's not true, but like for example on Instagram I feel way more protected and like it's more cozy and I can like, I don't know, it's not as open as Facebook, which doesn't make any sense, but like in my head that's like how it works and like why there's certain pictures that I will share there and not in another place. But it's like a very personal connection with the layouts of the websites and how they make me feel in terms of sharing or oversharing.
I guess this is a question that I would like to ask everybody on stage, and if anybody wants to answer, that's fine, and would be cool. But have you guys ever experienced things just kind of like snowballing and getting kind of taken up by people on the internet or in your lives where you have just absolutely no control of where it's going? And subset of that question is, have you guys ever been like 4chan'd?
What?
Like, yeah, have you guys ever been trolled? Basically.
No, I feel like I kind of wish I did. I feel like that'd be a landmark in someone's life if 4chan found something that you did that was completely ridiculous and had a lot of people hack every outlet you have on the internet. I think it's a strange honor because I feel like 4chan is this like weird divine entity online because it doesn't have it's completely anonymous. So maybe they will troll me now. I don't know.
Open season, guys.
I was trolled once. Now that I think about it, ages ago in like my first year of A levels, which wasn't. It was like a mix of internet and IRL. So it got to a point where it became kind of intense because I would have to deal with it at school on a daily basis. But in the end, it was all drawn from like sexual tension, so like it didn't like really make any sense. But then, yeah, online, like recently, I don't think I've ever been trolled, and I think it's because I'm my worst troll, and whenever someone tries to troll me, I agree with them, so it doesn't go anywhere. So usually I become friends with the people that start trolling me. And yeah.
Keyhole has some trolls out there, and we'd love to meet all of you.
Yeah, they're anonymous on Twitter, but hopefully someday they'll introduce themselves to us.
So I guess the third category that we should talk about is your role as an artist and as a consumer. And I know that both of you guys kind of pick up on specific products or lifestyles. And I'm kind of interested in like what, if you guys could articulate what it is about, like if you could just name it, and then sort of say like how sincere your relationship to it is.
I feel like it's really important to balance the attitudes between sincerity and irony, because I feel like regardless if you're trying to criticize like a corporation group or person, you're just trying to explore what your relationship to this other entity is. So sometimes it might be a celebration of something that, some piece of content that's in the work, but I feel like regardless it could be a possible like celebration or criticism, but I think that is maybe the question that we're trying to pose with our audience.
Regarding that, for a while, I was, especially in art school, I was always feeling kind of depressed of like how I couldn't afford certain materials. So I would end up like photoshopping a lot, or like pretending to use certain materials that I really couldn't afford. After a while of that, I started working with materials that were accessible to me. Especially when I had to move back to Spain for a while and there wasn't really anything. Like that's when I started started working with the €1 stores, items and things, because it was really what I could afford and what I was comfortable working with. In my case, I think it's pretty sincere because it's drawn from like necessity and like that's instead of. And in the end, I ended up loving these sort of materials and celebrating them in a way.
I feel like some people might also view it as like a relationship of power where people are intercepting some kind of image that a certain brand is trying to perceive, and maybe you could call it trolling, but maybe you could call it like someone reclaiming their position to something that is larger than them. So it's like their way of participating with something else.
I guess just on like an aspirational note, are there any brands or celebrities that you personally would use as like a model for how you're crafting yourselves?
Doge, the dog, that has really good branding. I think that's my favorite one.
I never knew how that was pronounced. It's Doge. Dog.
Doge?
Doge.
It's this really cute Shiba Inu.
Yeah, it's a really weird dog that is always like, wow.
Such feels.
Yeah.
Is it Japanese? Okay.
And I feel like the permanent spokesperson, as far as like celebrities go, I thought didn't we decide Rihanna was the person younger than Rihanna? Isn't that the subtitle for 89 plus? Right. Okay.
Well, that was exactly an example of something that's snowballing into something uncontrollable, because somebody said that. I think it was Harry Burke who said that, and we thought it was very funny. And then at some point somebody said it, and then it snowballed, and then became something that overshadowed all the other aspects we wanted to put forward with, and so it didn't represent very much what we wanted to say, but that's a good example, answering Dena's question.
I think I'm older than Rihanna.
I'm older than Rihanna too.
There could not be a better conclusion. This is the moment to thank our speaker. Thank you very much. Thank you all.